Hey everyone, welcome to session 8. It's May 3rd. It's about 6:35 p.m. Central Time. We just got done talking to Greg Drobny, who was the student outreach and recruitment manager. So if you've got any questions for him, you can always Slack him. You can email Greg at codeplatoon.org, or you can ask me and I will pass those on. We talked about upcoming deadlines, what's going on with the different funding options, what SkillBridge is, and then we kind of saved these two until we got into class here tonight. And so I'm going to talk about these here real quick, and then we're going to get into the challenges for the evening. So basically the curriculum for Code Platoon is for the full stack immersive program is going to comprise of two core languages, which are Python on the back end and JavaScript on the front end. Python extends out into the Django framework, and that's what we use as a backend server that basically talks to your database. And Code Platoon teaches PostgreSQL, which is a flavor of SQL, or SQL. There's Oracle, which you have to pay a ton of money for. And so you may see that at some big companies, but it's not as popular as it used to be. And PostgreSQL and MySQL are kind of the two main flavors of SQL that you'll run into out there. On the front end, so when we're writing the client side, what a person sees on their actual monitor at home is going to be in JavaScript, and we use React.js for that. React.js is very big. It's been around for a long time as far as JavaScript frameworks go, and it's powerful, but there is definitely a learning curve. This is kind of the last thing you learn at Code Platoon before you move into your individual and group projects. And so like everything else you do is building towards React, and then being able to build a full stack web application where you use React and Django to create that. Now, obviously on the front end, you also learn HTML and CSS, and how those two different languages interact with React and how you kind of tie all of that together. And this is what it looks like in a graph. So on the front end, you've got JavaScript. So you learn vanilla JavaScript, the HTML, the CSS. So what we're doing right now is kind of like functional vanilla JavaScript. And you're going to take all of those things that you learn and move that into the React framework. And you're going to learn how to do this like the beginning basics of object-oriented programming. And we've talked a little bit about that in class. I gave an example of it when I was doing the testing. And then on the back end, you're going to learn Python, kind of like vanilla Python at the same time you're learning vanilla JavaScript. And you're actually going to start object-oriented programming in Python first. And then you're also going to learn SQL and PostgreSQL. And then you're going to learn the Django ORM, which is the object relationship manager. And so that when you send something from the front end to your back end, right here, that is what reaches back into the database. And you're basically writing SQL queries in Python and Pythonic code in Django. And the Django framework, I believe now it is a requirement for the individual projects or the group projects that you interact with at least one third-party API. And that's a long way off. And they have a list of free third-party APIs that you can build into your program. And all of this kind of wraps up together into what we call full stack web development, right? So you're learning your front end, you're learning your back end, and you're also learning how to set up a database and the basic modeling of a database. So if you've heard like columns and tables, those are pretty much the core components of what build a database. All right, So that is pretty much it for the slides. Do you have any questions about anything that Greg talked about, these two slides, anything in sessions 1 through 7, challenges you've ran into the outside, winning lottery numbers, whatever you guys want to talk about? Now's the time, and then we'll move into challenges. Nothing? All right. So let me go ahead and open up the challenges here. All right, so we finished up with range, I believe, on Monday. So the next challenge up is back of the line, and this is a good one. So we've got about 4 people in class, so I don't think we need to do a breakout room. I am going to, like, this is a really good one, so I'm gonna let you guys dive into this one right from the get-go. I'm going to pull it up here. We're going to talk about it, and then I'll let someone take over the screen share. We'll pause recording, and we'll probably give you up to about 25 minutes to solve this one, 30 minutes if need be. But I know the core group that we have left here has really been knocking out the challenges. So if you finish it quicker, we just move on a little bit quicker. But with this one, we're going to write a function that takes in 2 arguments, an array of names and a number, either negative or positive. The number represents how many positions the name in the array should move. The expected output is the array of names with the same names in their new position. Okay, so as an example, if we give you an array of names and it's Kyle, Stacy, Tina, Kenesha, and Greg, and we give you a +2, right? So we take, it looks like we take Greg and we move him from the back to the front. And then we take Kenesha and we move her from the back to the front, right? And so there's that. And so we end up with Kenesha, Greg, Kyle, Stacy, Tina. And that's what we see down here. And if we put in a negative number, it looks like we're taking Kyle and we're taking him from the front and we're moving him to the back, right? So this has to be able to move in both directions depending on if it's given a positive or negative number. Right? And so grab these as examples and drop them over here. And again, so you see you're going to get the array of names, and you can just snag this one. You don't need to do anything special with it. Drop it down here underneath your function. And so R of names gets fed into your function call, and then the number of positions that are going to be changed. All right. Any questions about this one before I pause the recording and let you guys take over? Okay. And I guess because we're not doing a breakout room, do you want me to continue to record while you work through this? Do you think that there's any value to that, or do you want me to pause the recording?
I mean, I guess you could pause it. I don't know if like us working through it is something that, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how other people feel about it, but
I've got no problem doing it either way. So I will pause it
I
because
vote neutral.
what I have been doing. But if someone thinks that they would get some use from going back to and reviewing it, I can leave it on. But for right now, I'll go ahead and pause it.
yeah, I think the pause works.
Okay. All right, so welcome back from the back of the line challenge. And I saw that the group got a solution to it. So let's go ahead and go over this. I already filled out some of the prep here. We talked about what we need to do. We're basically going to take in 2 parameters. One is going to be an array of names, and the second parameter is going to be a number which represents how many positions need to be shifted. An array, and we're going to return an array shifted the appropriate amount of times. And so we've got a couple of examples here, and I'll do the same thing that I recommended that you guys do. And that is to do this, because we are modifying the array when we run it. And if we run the function call multiple times, we'll chop this array up multiple times. All right, so let's go ahead. First thing, actually, I'm sorry. Let's go ahead and look at the pseudocode here. So we get two params passed in, the array of names and the number of positions to shift, right? And so we're going to need some conditional logic that does different actions for positive and negative integers respectively. All right, so if we get a positive integer, int, we want to do the following. Right, so if we get a positive integer, right, so we've got Kyle, Stacy, Tina, Kanisha, and Greg, and at the end of this we need Kanisha, Greg, Kyle, Stacy, and Tina, right? So to me that looks like we're taking Greg off the end, adding him to the front, and then we're taking Kanisha off the end and adding her to the front, right? So we need to remove last name in the array, which is a pop. And we need to add it to the front of the array with a unshift, right? So pop takes it off the front, unshift takes it off the, or adds it back to the front, right? So mdn.pop. The pop method removes the last element from an array and returns that element. So we're going to save it to a variable so that we have access to it, or we could do it all in one chained contained line of code, but we'll see how we feel when we get there. And then, so if we have a negative integer, right? So with a negative integer, we have Kyle, Stacy, Tina, Kanisha, Greg, and at the end we have Stacy, Tina, Kanisha, Greg, and Kyle. So it looks like we're taking Kyle off the front. So we're taking a name off the front and then adding it to the back, right? So we could say, which is going to be a dot shift, and then which is going to be a dot push. Did I lose anyone? Everyone can see my screen. Everyone can hear me okay?
Yep.
Cool.
Yes.
All right. So let's go ahead and build this out one chunk at a time. So let's go ahead and make sure that we can see both of our params coming in the way we expect. Oops, my positions is not Fine, because I definitely spelled it wrong. All right, so there's both our params for both those function calls. That's looking good to me. All right, so let's go ahead and tackle the positive case first. So we can say while, or I'm sorry, no, while, we'll do a for loop, let I equal 0, I less than num of positions, and we'll say I plus plus, and then we can say let popped name equal, and I believe we're popping on the positive. Yep. So we can say R of names dot pop. And now I saw when you guys were working through your solution, you had actually created like another variable, like another array that you were storing your pop names in, and then adding it in before you return everything. And you don't really need to do that. You can actually just use your R of names, so the variable that gets put in right from the beginning, right? And so we're popping it off the end, and we're going to unshift it onto the front, right? And we're just going to unshift popped name. And again, we don't necessarily have to declare this variable. I think this is just a little bit cleaner instead of just chaining a bunch of stuff together. And so let's go ahead and see what happened when we did this, right? So we've got our loop. We're going to go for the number of positions. It shouldn't do anything for the second function call yet. Or actually, it may blow up on the second one because I haven't put any conditional logic in yet. R of names unshift is not a function because that is not uppercase, that is lowercase. There we go. So we've got Kenesha, Greg, Kyle, Stacy, Tina, right? Kenesha, Greg, Kyle, Stacy, Tina. So that looks pretty good for me for the top. And if we look at the bottom one, Kyle, Stacy, Tina, Kenesha, Greg, Kyle, Stacy, Tina, Kenesha, Greg. So nothing really happened here because on the very first loop through, basically this -1 blows it up and nothing happens. So let's go ahead and do some conditional logic. So we can say if num of positions is greater than 0. And let's go ahead and move this up into here. Right. And I'm gonna format for me. Go. So we've got that there. Now, outside of that first if statement, we can write our else case. Right, and it's going to look very similar. So we can say for let I equal, let's see here. So this we could say I equals 0. I is greater than num of positions. I may be doing this backwards. I'm trying to think here. Well, no, while it's greater, and then we're going to do I negative, right? So we're going to decrement into that negative number. And we'll see if this works. And so now we're going to say let, we're going to pull from the front this time, right? So we can say let shifted name equal R of names dot shift. Right, and then we are going to take R of names dot push because we want to add it to the end. We need to add it to the back of the array, and we can say shifted name. All right, so let's go ahead and run this now. All right, so we want to see Stacy, Tina, Kenesha, Greg, Kyle. Stacy, Tina, Kenesha, Greg, Kyle. Up here we've got Kenesha, Greg, Kyle, Stacy, Tina, which matches this. So we didn't undo, we didn't break our logic up here when we did this one. So we can go ahead and get rid of this console.log, and we can return R of names. Right, and we're getting our answer there. So any questions on how I solved this one? And this is very similar to the solution that you came up with on your own, just outside of using that separate variable is kind of like an unnecessary step.
Yeah, the efficiency and cleanliness of the code is yeah.
Yeah, and again, you could get crazy here. Like I could write some ternary statements that depending on if you get a positive or negative number, and then we could swap out some of these things and only write one for loop. But you're basically getting more convoluted just to save yourself having to write a second different for loop. So I'm pretty happy with this solution at this point. All right, so that is back of the line. And like I said, this is a fun one. I really like the way you guys were talking and looking things up while you were working on your own. So this one is a bit of a brain teaser. All right, so let's see here. It is 7:30. Let's take a look at largest error. All right, so write a function that takes in a list of incorrect numbers and a correct number. Return the incorrect number furthest away from the correct number. All right, so this one's going to be a good one too. This one seems fairly straightforward, but you're definitely going to need some of the built-in tools in JavaScript. So I'll let you think about some of that. I am going to go. Does anyone have any questions about this before I pause recording? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pause. All right, everyone, welcome back from the challenges. We're finishing out the evening with the My Coworkers challenge. There's a couple of different ways to solve it. The way I solved it through here on this first pass is just using a .for each built-in. So just to go over this here real quick, you're given an input as a nested array of colleagues. Within the nested array, there are your colleagues' titles and characteristics of them, right? So at the top level, we've got Stacy, and then as the second element in the first array, we have a nested array with two more strings in there, which are IT person and super smart. So if we were to take a look at this kind of as a from the index, right? So the name is in the 0 index position, and then the 1 index position, so the second element in there is a nested array. So what we'd be looking at is that this one, let's put these in boxes here real quick. So this element would be 0. And if you just did box 1 here, right, you get this whole nested array. And so the way we access the individual characteristics in there would be 1, 0, and then 1, 1. All right. And now I did solve this with a built-in .for each. And so when we do that, we write a callback function, and for each does not return anything. It just basically goes through each element and then performs whatever action you assigned on it. And we're just sending information to the console here. We're not doing any data mutation, anything like that. No math. We're not doing anything to the strings. We're just extracting them out. We're putting them in a template literal, and we're spitting them out to the console, right? So colleague 0 is going to be the name, and then colleague 1, 0 is going to be their title, and then colleague 1, 1 is going to be their trait. So, right, we end up with Stacy as the IT person and is super smart. Jenny is the manager and is very empathetic. Corey is the software engineer and is very funny. And this could also be solved with a for loop instead of the built-in. So we could take a look at that as well. So we could say for let I equal 0, I less than colleagues dot length, and then I plus plus is space, right? And we could do the same thing. So we could say console.log, right? And we have that same template literal, and we're going to do something along the lines of this. So let's go ahead. And I just want to make sure that I can see this whole thing. So I could say colleagues. And we know that when we're iterating, we're counting by the I there. And so if we do this, right, there's everything kind of spit out to the top level there in a template literal. And so I know that if I do I and then 0, right, there's my names. And so now I've started this, and so let's grab these, that in there, and this one, right? And so we still need to dig into that next level down. Gonna do this. No, we'll get an error message. Won't do anything until I fix this one. So sorry, this needs to be a 1. This one needs to be a 0. And so that's 1, 0. And then we need 1 and 1. So it's 1 and 1. Right, and we get the same thing. So you can see that we end up having to use 3 boxes to dig down as we loop, and then into each of the nested arrays in there. Right, so we got the top level, the first level of nesting, and then the second level of nesting. All right. Any questions on how I solve this either way? And so we can see the built-in's a little bit cleaner way to do it in this version of doing it. All right, so that is it for session 8. I did not hear back from Greg as far as a response. I don't think. Why is this not? Why is it out here? Okay, yeah, I did not hear back anything from Greg. So Ty, I should probably hear back from him tomorrow when he gets into work. I'll pass along what the Bravo section of the DevOps program will look like as far as they've set a date for that yet or not. And then outside of that, if there aren't any other questions for me, that is it for the evening. And I will see you tomorrow night for session 9, which again is more of an informal session. There's no slides for it. We're just going to solve challenges. We're going to dig into the employee data, and then maybe grab a recursive one. And then also, if we want to, we can go out to Code Wars and maybe try and solve one as a group, something that I've never solved before either. And we can kind of jump in on the challenge and see how we can do as a team. Anything else for me?
No, sir. Thank you.
All
No,
right.
thank you.
Yep.
Great job tonight. You guys did awesome working as a team and solving those problems. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.